What's happening, Cincinnati soccer talkers? Welcome to the big show here this Monday evening. Glad you're with us. I am Nick Serbeling. Hope everybody had a wonderful, warm Ohio weekend as that weather starts to warm up here in the Midwest. It's starting to get pretty out. The sun's out. We're going to have soccer here before you know it. This week on the show, we're going to be joined by MLS analyst and Extratime co-host Matt Doyle. He's been on the show before, so we're going to get his thoughts on the FC Cincinnati offseason and what he's looking forward to, at least for the Orange and Blue here in 2021. Joining me a little bit later on in the show as well, we have Brian Weigel. We've got Coach Brad Goff and Brad Weigel with us as well. So if you've got any feedback or any questions, hit us up on Twitter at Cincy Soccer Talk. You can email us feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. All right, let's welcome in the man of the hour. He was on our show a little over a year ago, and he's back with us here on the CST hotline. We welcome in MLS analyst and Extratime co-host Matt Doyle. Matt, thank you so much for being with us this week. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be back. Let me ask you this. A little over a year ago when I was on the show, how high was I on the Jurgen Locadia and Yuya Kubo and other signings that were made?
To the moon. I don't know if he was to the moon. I think you were, is lukewarm a good adjective?
Was I lukewarm? Okay. All right. I believe that.
Yeah. So what do you make of the offseason so far for FC Cincinnati? They bring in Brenner. They've been rumored with some other moves, Luciano Acosta maybe, but what do you make of the offseason so far for FC Cincinnati?
I'm going to say lukewarm.
Fair enough.
I am glad that they've showed ambition once again in going after in Brenner, a $13 million player, at least by as per their valuation. I think that they made a smart move in getting Ronald Matarrita at left back. Though I didn't think left back was the biggest of their problems last year. He is at least a top 5 left back in the league, so that's an upgrade. I think that I didn't have Calvin Harris going to Cincinnati. I didn't have him ahead of Philip Mayaka in the draft, but he is universally regarded as one of the best attackers in the draft. So adding talent there is a good thing. So it looks pretty good. But there is so much work to do with this team, and as we saw last year, just signing a bunch of guys with good resumes isn't a guarantee of much on-field success.
So it's Brad Weigel here. Matt, I appreciate you coming on. Love your show. Love everything you guys do over there. But where did FC Cincinnati go wrong in your mind, man? It's almost like the Brenner moves, some of the moves out there, it just quite doesn't maybe still feel in maybe nationally speaking, and I'm not actually putting words in your mouth or anything, but it almost kind of feels like nationally speaking, there's still a lot of non-believers out there. A lot of people like, yeah, Brenner, he's great, but is that really what you guys needed? Where did FC Cincinnati go wrong?
In terms of these signings, you mean? Or in terms of why people are skeptical?
Yes. Why are people skeptical?
Okay, because Brenner's CV compared to Jurgen Locadia is nowhere near as impressive. Like Jurgen Locadia, 4 months before he was playing in MLS for FC Cincinnati, he was scoring a goal every 200 minutes in the Bundesliga for Hoffenheim, for a mid-table team. He was on the fringes of the Dutch national team in the prime of his career, and he scored one goal last year. And the team as a whole scored 12 goals. And arguably the best midfielder on the team, it wants out. So it just seems like there are so many structural things wrong with this team before they get to the final third that, having a guy like Brenner, who really is just a creature of the final third, doesn't address the underlying issue. I mean, the underlying issues was this team could not create chances. They scored 12 goals all last year, and that was right in line with their expected goals. I think they were at like 12.87 over the course of the season. So like throwing on another forward, in place of Lacadia, presumably, like maybe that gets you something, but it maybe fix one of the symptoms, but I don't think it cures the disease, so to speak.
So, we've been talking about Lacadia. We've been talking, and somebody we haven't been talking about a ton is David Copperfield himself, Kubo, just the disappearing act. Can we give these players a mulligan kind of going into this year? Do you think that they should expect, a jump just because they're more familiar with the league, and as well as having a coach that's going to be here through the whole preseason?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, right? Because Kubo's done it on a pretty good level. Again, Lacadia was literally doing it in the Bundesliga just before he got to MLS, and 2020 was a nightmare for everybody. So I think there is something of okay, this team gets a mulligan, or these individual players get a mulligan, and certainly Jaap Stam came in to a less than ideal situation when he got there, but there was no improvement over the course of the season in terms of how they played. And they didn't, at no point in 2020 can I tell you how Cincinnati actually wanted to get into the final third. And I don't until I see some of that happen first in preseason and then, in the opening few weeks of the season, I'm going to have I'm going to reserve my right to be skeptical about this overhaul working this time, because it looked even better on paper 12 months ago, and we know how that ended up turning out.
Matt, this is Coach Goff here. I'm wondering, FC Cincinnati brings in Brenner from Brazil, the first signing of that sort in MLS. They've been linked with Lucho Acosta, who has had, let's just say, some moments, if not enough. Is this team showing ambition, or are they just throwing darts at the wall and hoping something sticks at this point? Where do you see these signings in terms of what they're trying to do?
So I think I do lean more towards showing ambition, because, Brenner was producing at a young age for a very good team in South America. And you don't that's not, there's no team in the world that wants to have less talent, right? And by bringing Brenner in, Cincinnati has more talent, and that checks the main box that you want to check. And Lucho Acosta is not a signing I would make, but you also know that if you put the right structure around him, he can be really, really good in MLS. And if they had gone out and spent $13 million on a 20-year-old center forward who had never done it in MLS, and then spent another, $8 million on a playmaker who had never done it in MLS, you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. Whereas with this, you can get that from Lucho Acosta. You've seen it happen with DC United twice. So now it's incumbent upon the front office and Jaap Stam to put the right structure around him in order to get the best out of Lucho, which means that you start getting the best out of Brenner and Calvin Harris and Barriel and maybe Yuya Kubo, and who knows, maybe Lacadia will stay as well. They'll either play with two forwards or he'll play on the wing or something. So getting that structure correct is job number one. And none of us are going to know if they did it or not until mid-May at the earliest. And once we get to that point, then we can say, okay, not only did they show ambition with these signings, but they were targeted and smart about how they went about it. And that's led to them finally becoming a good MLS team.
We're getting questions in the comments about what do you know about Lucho, Matt? Is he signed yet? No. My question on Lucho, though, it's okay. So he was almost like a top 10. He was probably a top 10 center playmaker in the league. And I kind of want to know, is he still at that level, or what specific pieces in that structure do you think he needs to be, a top 5 attacking player in this league?
So it's tough to call him a top 10 playmaker in the league, even though his numbers were spectacular in 2018, because he didn't show up the first half of the year. He didn't show up basically for all of 2017, and he didn't show up the first half of 2016. For the second half of 2016 and the second half of 2018, he was amazing. He was absolutely phenomenal, especially in 2018, week after week after week. But if you've only been good for 5 months out of the past 5 years, I don't care how talented you are. You're not one of the top 10 anything. You're a guy who needs very specific preconditions in order to succeed. As for how DC United did it, he was almost more of a goal scoring creator rather than a pure creative force. And that meant, letting him run off of a center forward and like break lines, both with and without the ball. It meant he had very little responsibility in terms of tracking back and being part of any sort of defensive structure. And it meant that, like, DC, when they were going really well in second half of 2016 and 2018, they were letting him try whatever he wanted and living with the results if they were bad. And that led to a lot of turnovers. But they had they had multiple defensive midfielders behind him. They had really hardworking fullbacks, and they had really sort of solid center backs, and it was fun to watch, and it was worth it for them because they won. But the rest of the time he was in DC, they did not win. Those turnovers killed them. And his lack of defense and ability to sort of pull the strings in possession, that hurt them really badly. And I think that with, Frankie Amaya is a really good, I think, sort of terrier, bulldog, whatever type of canine you want, ball winning central midfielder. And if you get him to buy into that role, he would be very good behind Lucho Acosta. And then, the Matocho, I'm not saying his name correctly, the 6 that they brought in last year, he would seem to fit that role as well. So the pieces, you can kind of see it coming into place. But again, we don't know. I thought the pieces were going to be in place last year, and they clearly weren't. And so it's kind of wise to wait and see until at least we have a half dozen games in the book, and then we could say, all right, you know what? Since he figured some stuff out, and they're going to be a real danger now.
Well, you just mentioned a topic that has been quite, I don't know, inflaming is the wrong word in Cincinnati right now. Frankie Amaya, our guy who we thought was our cornerstone to build around here in Cincinnati for the foreseeable future. You mentioned that bulldog in the midfield. What do you make about his situation, requesting the trade, and then also what do you make about maybe integrating back into FC Cincinnati post those comments, post Olympic camp?
It's going to be tough. There's not a long list of 20-year-olds who have straight up, in the press requested a trade in MLS history. We just haven't had a lot of that. And I think Frankie Amaya has probably been one of the few bright spots for Cincinnati over the first 2 years. So I'm sure it hit like a hammer blow. But at the same time, I'm not sure that he was in a position where he had so much leverage that he could do that without there being any blowback. So it's definitely one of the more interesting things to keep an eye on in this preseason. I have no idea how it's going to play out. I do know that if the reports of 7 figures worth of allocation money, if they turned that down, that's a lot. That's a lot of allocation cash. And you don't turn that down and then put a guy on the bench to punish him. You can't. You would be cutting off your nose to spite your face. So I kind of do expect him to play. But a lot of the times, the things that I've expected from Cincinnati are complete opposite of the things that have happened.
We're hanging out with Matt Doyle from MLSsoccer.com and the Extra Time podcast here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. And so I guess the question we like to ask those folks who kind of see the wider picture across the league and see what other teams are doing in comparison to FC Cincinnati. There's some great GMs in this league. Where do you think Gerhart Nicht currently stacks up in MLS circles? How do you think he has done so far in the short amount of time he's been here in Cincinnati, trying to learn a new league and a new system, a new way to do things here in the world of soccer?
I mean, it hasn't really been great for him. Most of the signings have not worked out. I thought the weird thing last year was signing Kubo and Lakadia as DPs when, neither guy is really the type of winger that you would want in a 4-3-3, which is, I think, what the original plan was supposed to be with how last year's team is going to play. So it's been very scattershot. And I imagine he's starting to feel some pressure to start getting some of these right, because, I mean, if Brenner flops, or forget flopping, if they're just not able to get him consistent service, he's going to be on not just the kid, but the coaching staff, and then the next step is the front office. So it's tough because he was brought in the middle of that first season when the original roster build was, we'll say, less than ideal. And he's had to dig out from a lot of bad contracts and kind of maybe a broken culture from the start. And that takes time. But in taking that time, you have to get a couple of things right yourself. And when, your DP signings are not producing and your veteran signings are not starting, and the draft, the 19-year-old, 20-year-old draft pick who you were going to try to build around is requesting a trade. A lot of things are going wrong. So, it's going to be tough for Nijkamp in 2021. And if it's the end of the season, there's not much forward progress, and you have to imagine the heat's going to be on him for 2022.
So what about Jaap Stam? Same sort of question. I mean, last season, FCC shipped a record number of goals. Like you said, there wasn't a ton of improvement over the course of the season, albeit with limited time on the training pitch and things like that. In the past, Stam has favored kind of playing a short tiki-taka style, followed by, really direct play, trying to catch the defense, pushing forward to win those short passes. Do you see any discernible tactical ideal that Stam is working towards, whether it be that you've seen on the field or with the personnel he's bringing in? How would you expect the team to be moving towards playing? What can we expect to be looking for?
I assume that he's going to want to use a 4-3-3 because he's Dutch, and because they drafted Harris with that second pick, and Harris is a winger, and they brought in Barriel, and Barriel is a winger, and just in general, most teams play with a 3-man front line rather than a 2-man front line these days. So I do think that in terms of formation, that's the direction that he's going to go in. In terms of just tactical approach, it was tough to take anything from last year because things were so bad defensively at the start of last year. There, by the 5th game or 6th game, there was nothing to do except close up shop and just try to stop the bleeding. And so basically all of 2020 was just a rearguard action. And, kind of give him a mulligan on that one because he came into such a tough situation. But there's not going to be any mulligans in 2021. Not when the team is spending like that, not when the fan base has expectations, as I gather the Cincinnati fan base does from my Twitter mentions anyway. So it's, I think he's going to have to show that he has some really clear ideas. And as Oscar Pareja and Bruce Arena have showed over the past couple of years, it doesn't need to take you 2 years to turn a team around in this league. If you have the right approach and you make a couple of good signings, you can do it damn near overnight. And that's something that I think a lot of the folks around the league are have seen what's happened for New England and Orlando City, and they're going to bear that in mind.
One of the reasons why we love having Matt on the show, and one of the reasons why we love listening to him on Extra Time, is he does not sugarcoat anything. He speaks the truth, and we certainly appreciate you being on the show, Matt. I got to ask as we get out of here. Today, you made your prediction on the over/under on goals for Brenner. A lot of folks in Cincinnati were surprised. Maybe not so many others. You just don't see him scoring a lot of goals this year, do you?
I don't. He's 20 or 21. He is coming to a team that scored 12 goals all of last year, that hasn't yet made significant upgrades in the engine room and in terms of raw creative power in central midfield. It is hopefully going to be a more normal year for all of us than 2020 was, but it's still going 2021 is still going to be a really weird year. And so I just think it's wise to keep expectations fairly low. Almost all players struggle in their first, especially young players struggle in their first MLS season. Maybe Brenner will buck the trend, but I would not put my money on that. I would put my money on the under. And the line for your listeners who maybe didn't hear me on Extra Time, the line I threw out was 10.5 goals for the season. Are you guys going to take the over on that?
I'm taking the under.
I would say it depends.
Okay, so I'm not the.
Yeah, depends on if we can get somebody in the midfield.
Mm-hmm. So let's say they add Lucho Acosta, they get that done. Then you're taking the over.
So there's a caveat to that, and the reason why I say there's a caveat to that is there are some attacking pieces. I don't know how that all fits in there, but I would venture to say if you had Loka and Brenner up top, they could be a dangerous pairing with an attacking midfielder set the table behind them. But as you said, this whole interview, there are so many ifs, ands, or buts and question marks. And we didn't even talk about the defense tonight.
Yeah.
Matt? It's the third, it feels like Cincinnati is an expansion team for the third straight year, because there's I have no idea what to expect. Last year has almost no bearing on what to expect from how this year's team is going to play. And maybe that's good, right? Yeah. Because last year was so miserable. And maybe that gives them the clean slate they need to do something like run a 3-5-2 with Loka and Brenner up top and a true playmaker underneath. That'd be dope. I think that would actually work pretty well. But it's a lot of ifs and a lot of maybes and not a lot of clarity at this point in the year.
Yeah. Well, that's how you kind of summed it up pretty perfectly. We have no idea what to expect either here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. So as we said, Matt, you come on, you speak the truth, and we appreciate you being on the show. We're big fans of yours over at Extra Time. And again, we appreciate you being on.
All right. Cheers, boys. It was good to be
Matt.
That's Matt Doyle joining us from Extra Time and MLSsoccer.com here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Always love getting his perspective on the orange and blue. We really thank him for joining us this week here on the show. It's that time of the show where we give a big shout out and thanks to our tremendous supporters. So let's give it up to Tim Bronsel, Tom Rose, Matt Adamczyk, Mike Hudson, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Matt Imholt, Matthew Long, Joe Colling, Tara Mullins, Riley, Stephen Burke, and Melissa Bingle. Thank you so much for supporting us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. To learn more on how you can support the show, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Over the years, believe it or not, we've gotten quite a few emails from folks asking where can they get CST shirts. I don't understand it, but people have asked about it. And so we are very excited to finally announce that Cincinnati Soccer Talk has a merch store. That's right. You can go check it out over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/shop and use promo code podcast to get 10% off your first purchase. That promo code lasts for this week only. So if you want to get a shirt, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/SOP and help support the show here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk.
For our people who couldn't see who are listening, because this is an audio podcast.
Sure.
There is definitely a picture with Ken Hetker's face. Demand
That's
better,
right.
ladies and gentlemen. So I absolutely love it.
Yes, so we're going to be coming out with more and more designs throughout the year as more and more shirts warrant it.
I can't wait till you have like one of the Weigels. It's like two, receding hairline guys with like pointy little tips in the middle. One's got glasses, one doesn't.
I think you just gave Joey a project.
Just spit and fire.
Yes. So go check it out over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/SOP. Like I said, this is a brand new thing. We're trying it out. Hopefully everybody gets a shirt. Again, use the promo code podcast. Get 10% off. Why not? So thank you for all your support here at CST. All right. So guess what? The players have reported to Cincinnati. The biggest one reporting over the weekend in Brenner with a very cool announcement by the club. So he's here, Bri. A lot of people were wondering whether or not he'd be here due to COVID restrictions back home, but he's here, and that's pretty exciting.
Thank the Lord. Swear to goodness, if we couldn't get him in, I'd be very disappointed. I did want to follow up a little bit on Matt's interview here.
Go for it.
And it kind of feeds into Brenner and Locadia and a couple of other guys. I think Matt is spot on a lot of his takes this evening, and it's going to be. I think there's going to be times where it's difficult, but we're also going to see the light. I mean, there were points like last year when we saw Locadia's talent, and we are adding hopefully Lucho, Brenner, having Locadia back. So I think that's good. I took exception to his. It's like another expansion side comment. I think we have a lot of talent on this team that just wasn't settled, was experimenting. Things were all in flux last year that I'm very excited for. And I think we are a team that has a lot to look forward to. So I don't want to be super Debbie down on us with that. But I think Brenner's going to be a great piece. Yes. Look at the guys brought in for high values like Brian Rodriguez, Ezekiel Barco. These are guys who have moments of brilliance, but haven't always lit the league on fire. So I think there does need to be some tempering of expectations there, but still having him in and having more pieces around him. I don't love Acosta as a creator, but I do like him as a guy who can score goals. And I think if Brenner is the type of guy that can still lay the ball off to Acosta, I think that can breed success for FC Cincinnati. So having him here, to me, is very positive on that.
To come back at you, though, because I think I'm probably the Debbie Downer out of the CST guys. I don't love the roster build. I don't love how necessarily the level of talent. I don't love the salary cap part of the build. I think there are serious doubts that Matt Doyle sees. But if you think about him, and I think he's accurate to where this almost feels like it's a third expansion season. Because if you look at our roster here, we are so far back in the evaluation stage of seeing which guys are legitimate starters in Major League Soccer. And if you look at it right now, there's one, maybe two. Matt Arita is
hold on.
Maybe Brenner.
Mocacho is not a starter in this league for majority of teams.
Ariel's
going to be a starter.
4 games. We've seen Barrial play 3 games. Those guys are still in the evaluation stage. You got to think about this. Kamahela Mocacho has played like 3 games in 15 months.
I think you need to rephrase your comment. I think you need to rephrase your comment for, are they a starter for an MLS Cup or MLS Cup contending side? Not necessarily stars in this league. I mean, we're heads and toes, I think, above where we were in our expansion season, but we just didn't have that final piece to unlock.
I will say this: the eternal optimist on our program is here with us tonight, and that is Coach Goff. I mean, he has been for weeks amongst us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk, praising what this offseason for Jaap Stam is going to do and how much it's going to drastically improve this team. Coach, tell the listeners why that is.
Listen, we hit on it earlier when we said this team has a ton of ifs, right? Well, when I see a ton of ifs, I see a ton of lottery scratch-off tickets or whatever you want to say. Would you rather have 1 scratch-off ticket or 50? The more ifs you have, the more potential you have for those ifs to come good. You have guys like Barrial, guys like Kubo, Locadia. Those are guys on the team that had come into MLS, into a new country, into a new team that didn't have a coach, that weren't settled during a pandemic. If half of the ifs on this team just hit their regular potential, don't even exceed it, this team could be a lot better. You're going to have another year with Frankie Amaya getting better. I expect Makocho, even if he's not excellent, he's going to be better as he plays. Like Brad said, he hasn't played in 15 months, but 3 games. Well, the more games he gets, he is going to get better, knock that rust off. I still think Barreal is an excellent player and is going to continue to push forward and become one of those types of players that we look back on in 5 years and be like, oh man, when he's playing for some big club, say, remember when he played for FC Cincinnati. This team has a ton of ifs, but they also have a ton of potential. And that's what I see. And that's what I'm positive about.
So people are going heads over heels today in crew land about this Alex Matan character, who's a young playmaker coming into Columbus, which is a great move for them. But the Barreal and him have the exact same valuation, if not Barreal more. So I mean, there is a lot of potential here, and we had a dumpster fire. So, I mean, yes, you can be critical. Yes, there are a lot of questions about the roster budget charges and all those things like that. But we are not a wooden spoon team anymore.
When you build a team, you got to know where there's a floor. And right now we know our floor is 12 goals. And I don't see that much like that's going to improve that right now.
$13 million says you're wrong.
I do think we're going to be better, but like we got a long way to go. And I just still think you said scratch offs. There are still way too many questions. I just think the floor is still so just low. It's just low.
Interesting.
I need to be refreshed, man. I need to have the new Weston Stadium, you know, the LEDs rain over me and see the lights and feel the love and see the guys. And I just like literally we've got Matarrita and Brenner right now. Those are our only 2 difference makers in my mind over last year.
Yeah, all I'm saying is there's a lot of teams out there that were better than FC Cincinnati last year, but the fan base is sitting there thinking our team hasn't gotten any better. It's for sure gotten worse, if anything. Teams like NYCFC, and certainly they're starting from a higher place, but FC Cincinnati has so many points of potential. I don't think that they're all going to come true, but I do expect Kubo to be better. Loca can't be worse, right? So it's going to be the same or better. Brenner is going to be an upgrade of some sort. There's so many of those situations. I just don't see how this team doesn't take a big step forward. You know, the teams with the most to gain have the most room to grow. And I see that's where FC Cincinnati is.
And we keep talking about, you know, your perfect example right now, Brad. You're wearing a Shmidi Yakuba shirt.
This is a little bit tight, man.
How much?
I had to have him send me a new one.
How much?
A bit big. It's kind of funny. The night that I wear a KLR shirt on CST, we publicize our new CST shirts there. So thank you for the production advice there, Subs. But
how much?
You showed up on Boston time, and so I didn't get a chance to tell you.
So what I'm saying is I bitch about this. Sorry. I complain about this a lot. And we talk about the roster build, but there is going to be a lot of money sitting on the bench. And I do think that there's a little bit more quality in that. So I don't love it. I don't love how much money's sitting on the bench. I'd rather that be distributed differently, but there is, I mean, we're talking about Kyle Scott and Caleb Stanko and all these guys where we're going to have enough room. So I think there's more than meets the eye.
Let's talk about Kyle Scott, right? I mean, a couple weeks ago, Michael Lahoud was on our show and immediately dismissed this potential signing. I mean, he was not on board from the get-go. Coach and Bri, you both have had a chance to watch a little bit of his game film. I'll start with you, Coach. What do you make?
I think maybe one Michael Lahoud might have already had his Verde pants on there when he was on the show and just hasn't told us, because I'm watching Kyle Scott and again, all I see is potential. It's another guy, and I don't love that all FC Cincinnati seems to have as players that have not hit their stability and hit their potential yet. But this is a young kid. He's domestic, and he reminds me way more of a kid like Brendan Aronson than he does of a guy like Tommy McCabe. He's really good in tight spaces. He's not afraid to hit that penetrating pass and break the lines. He plays well on the half turn. He can get into a tackle. I think there's a lot to like about this kid, and I would not be a bit shocked if he ended up being a player who doesn't start for FC Cincinnati, but is a really useful piece to fill in during injury times or rotation, or when, you know, Frankie Amaya is getting called up to the senior national team.
Coach already has this guy making the team, Bri.
I can't breathe right now. Verde pants. Love you, Michael. I think again, there's a lot of potential, and a lot of upside. Kind of what we just said a couple of minutes ago. He reminds me, like, this signing's in like the vein of Emerson Hyndman to Atlanta, where he seems to be more of like a piece where a contender would bring him in versus like a project, considering that's not necessarily a place of need. But there is a relationship with Coach Jaap Stam. He mentioned it today in his interview that he followed him very closely. He tried to bring him in at Reading, big fan. He lost touch with Scott over the past couple of years, and his name kept back up, and they're bringing him in on a trial just to see what he has. I mean, if this guy can pan out, I mean, as the video shows, as some stats show, this could be a backup number 10. He could be a guy that pushes forward, also does some of the box-to-box midfield stuff. I don't think he's going to be a destroyer kind of guy. He's not a huge, big body guy. But again, I think this is a decent move. He's domestic. The only thing I think is a negative in this, and Brad might disagree, is where does he fit into the roster budget? Again, is he going to take up a senior roster spot versus a supplemental roster spot? I don't know, but again, I really like what video we saw when he was over in the Netherlands playing, but unfortunately, he just hasn't had a lot of senior minutes, and maybe he gets that here in MLS at some point.
Yeah, I think for him, though, to make the roster, he's got to occupy a supplemental spot. So for those who aren't cap experts, you get 20 senior spots, and those tend to be your higher paid players, anywhere from like a Brenner to like a Nick Hagland, maybe a Ben Lunt this year, but we'll see. Then you get supplemental guys. We'll see the Frankie Amayas and the Calvin Harrises, probably Cody Cropper. And I think that if Kyle Scott's going to make the team, I think it's probably going to have to be in that role. If not, I just don't see him occupying a senior spot. Now, you mentioned Emerson Hyndman. Okay, at least like Emerson Hyndman and Gideon Zalalem had success on some loan stints out there. Kyle Scott, I think he had 14 matches at Telstar. He did all right, but he really has very, very little senior experience. He's had a lot of injuries, so I think it's a roll of the dice, kind of like a Ben Mines if you can get him on the supplemental roster. But if he's a senior roster on a team that already has so many question marks, I just don't necessarily see it. Again, high upside, but I mean, he's 23. He's already several years older than Amaya. I think if we would have seen it, we would have probably seen it by now.
Listen, I'm going to leave the cap talk to Brad and the stats talk to Ken, but I'm watching film, and the film shows me that this kid has a little bit of that it factor, playing in tight spaces, playing on the half turn, line splitting passes. What I saw, which albeit isn't a ton and is not at a senior level, really impressed me. And I'll take a guy performing in the U23s of Newcastle over trying to, throw a dart with the USL player or even a draft pick at this point in a lot of cases.
It's just how the team's made up. If it's a supplemental roster, hell yeah, go right for it. But if he's going to have a senior roster spot, then why are we bringing guys back like Caleb Stanko and Medine and some of those guys? Those are more the questions I have, and I think maybe sometimes my frustration with how the team was built and maybe this small shirt bleeds into some of my anger tonight. But I think, like I said, it's how the roster is going to be set up and looking down the road. And if he's a supplemental guy, he does well. Maybe bump him up in a year or so. I guess that's more my beef than anything. There's so many question marks. We got to get better. I'm tired of losing.
Yeah. Speaking of question marks, Luciano Acosta, Bri, still playing for Atlas.
Well, I think Stephen Goff said that we finally agreed to terms with DC United, which is great. Atlas is trolling the hell out of us on Twitter still, putting his face up on every tweet they possibly can. So, I really hope this is close to getting done, or we at least have some sort of backup that's pretty close to coming. He's playing well. He's driving that price up. There's been talk among people, where's he going to fit into the roster? And I think this is a good question for Brad or Ken. If he keeps performing and doing well, what Atlas is unbeaten in their last 5. I think they have 15 points in the Clausura, and they've got 13 of those in the past 5 games with him playing a huge part. So who knows if they're going to let him go anymore? their season the Clausura runs through the end of April. So, could it push him off coming here till May or June? I don't know. But I really hope to see this this coming soon. Coach Stam had admitted in his press conference today he wants the news and is hoping for the news soon. So I think we're still on pins and needles here.
Where does he fit, Brad? Is he going to be a DP? He's going to have to be a DP, right? If he keeps playing like he is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion on where he's going to fit in. Right now at Atlas, he's making $2 million a year. I think the hope at one point was that Atlas just wants them off of their books, and so maybe they would eat some of that cash. I'm not sure I see it. I don't know. I don't know if we had a graphic. I can always share my screen. If not, go on CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. I'm sure Ken and I will have something up here soon. But essentially, he's going to have to be a DP for FC Cincinnati, at least at the start. Right now, we've got too many guys that are eating up TAM contracts more than likely. You got Medullion in. We're going to have to buy down Kubo. We're going to have to buy down Cruz. You're going to have to use that money for Kamahela Makocho to get him under the cap hits. So there's just not enough money there. Now, I think one of the questions and what might be one of the delays is what is that cap charge going to be? The one positive to me is if FC Cincinnati can get him in that $1.25 million range, that might free them up in maybe a year when we lose some of the contracts like Vancouver for Medullion, where you might be able to buy him down, or maybe you buy him down this summer. I'm not really sure. I see it. Ken and I always go back and forth with our charts. Can we do this? Can we not? I think we're both under the general consensus that there's no way that we can get him at a TAM contract at the present moment. If you do, there's no flexibility at all. Yeah, here you go. Well, that's the main one, but it's going to have to probably be a DP. And then how many roster spots does that leave us if we do get a DP? Stam said today you're more than likely going to get an attacking player, probably like an attacking midfielder. You're probably going to get a defender, and you're probably going to get a winger. He'd love to get a winger. Well, if you look at this roster and how many senior spots, there's really only 3 up for question. And if we assume right now it's going to be Lucho Costa is that midfielder, and then Armando Mendez is maybe that defender, then your last question, is it going to be Franco Kovacic? Is it going to be a winger, or is it going to be a center back? Right now, there are 3 real center backs on the roster. If we want to run a 3-5-2 at some point in time, you're going to need at least another center back. So I think it's going to have to be Acosta as a DP, and then that still leaves FC Cincinnati, plenty of GAM to go out, maybe trade for an international roster spot, maybe go out and get another decent player. But we'll probably have more on that soon.
Yeah, so if you want to check that out, go over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/roster. Ken and Brad have done a great job of breaking all of that down from a budget standpoint. Some of the numbers, I'll be honest, way over my head. That's why I like to go to Coach and ask for the, he's not worried about the numbers. He just sees it. He calls it like he sees it. Is that the best way to describe that, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I do on Talking Tactics, I do the segment called The Film Room. And, I've never been the kind of person who really gets into stats. I like higher level analytics, ball recoveries, things like that. But in terms of goals and assists, there's so many other factors on the pitch. You have a game that has 22 players out on the field there. You look at the stats for a guy like Lucho Acosta, and you see so much sporadic play, and you see, is he really creating chances? Is he creating? And certainly like XG and XA start to get to some of that. But really, when you watch a player play, you see how he has quick feet, you see the decisions he makes, you can really understand what kind of player that is. A guy like Lucho Acosta has always had the tools. I don't think anybody would deny that when he's at his best, he is a phenomenal player. Not good, but great. The problem with Acosta is he's never done it consistently. What I would like to see from a guy like Acosta is for him to come in with a chip on his shoulder, play really well, and then get moved to Europe after 1 year. That PSG train that almost left from DC over to Paris. Let's just make it from Cincinnati, one-way ticket to Paris after a year or so with FC Cincinnati.
There are some other players being rumored around, Bry. I haven't seen a whole lot of chatter from an American side, but we have definitely seen some chatter from the South American side regarding Armando Mendez.
Speaking of KLR shirts, Jonah, you better make one. Why
are you going to him? We can do it now.
Okay, well, he's just clever.
We love you too, Jonah.
He's clever.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
He also doesn't care too much about cease and desist as much as we do.
That's funny. No, back to Armando again. I think I touched on it quite a bit last week. Just hoping, I think we've seen some reports, we've heard some, flutterings around FCC land that he's going to stay at Nacional till the end of their season, which I believe is the end of March 27th, and then head over here. We'll see what happens. Looks like a stout individual. So that whole upside thing again, Coach.
Yeah, Coach hasn't probably watched any film of his. All he has seen from Hulk is that he just likes to put people on their behinds.
To call him Mini Hulk?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing mini about it.
Yeah, right. There's been some chatter about whether, the kind of player he is. He seems to have, again, stats. I haven't seen him play. Seems to have more defensive ability than going forward. So there's a lot of talk as could he fit as a right-sided center back in a 3-back setup, a 3-5-2 or something. That would be my interest with a guy like Mendez, if he can come in and have that flexibility of playing as a right center back or a right back, come in as a defensive substitute as a right back later in the game to kill something off, that sort of play. But I still think this team needs a starting right back unless they're going to play 3-5-2 and have Joe Zhao be the wing back on the right side. I think that's kind of a big question mark, is that right-sided defensive player.
Lots of questions remain to be seen here with the squad. And we're just, again, the players have just reported. And today in the presser, Bri, they made it pretty clear that it's not just one player they're waiting on. It might be multiple.
Well, yeah. So let's kind of go back. Everybody is in camp that's supposed to be, with the exception of Frankie, which again, he's in the US, and then Brenner's in quarantine. So we have, apparently everybody's there. Everybody's healthy, but yet Jaap was, I can't remember if it was Laurel or Pat that asked this question, but he did mention that the roster's not done, and they will be bringing in additional pieces. I mean, from what it sounded like, it was at least going to be 3, and I think that would make a lot of sense. Kind of hearing just the rumblings out there. He keeps talking, and I think we've heard this, another winger coming in. I'm very interested to see, what that person looks like, if it's a U23 or DP or somebody. But I think there is, kind of to Matt Doyle's point, they're still trying to build that structure around Acosta and Brenner.
So how does it all fit, Brad?
Money wise,
under budget.
Under budget.
As long as the check's clear. As long as we're not fudging stuff like Miami.
Yeah.
Hashtag blasphemy tweety.
Under the table.
Yeah, what's up with that, man? Come on. It's like you're an owner of the league. You should know better. But
you got to remember how David Beckham came in the league.
How many black eyes or financial losses is MLS going to take because of David Beckham? Seriously, you think about it. They took a $200 million hit on that expansion fee. Now they got this stuff. It's taken forever. Now they built an erector set of a stadium worse than Columbus down in Fort Lauderdale, not even Miami. I'll get moving. I'm sorry. See Brian's eyes rolling back there. No,
I'm sure that back when David Beckham arrived, there were some arrangements. So this ain't new.
Right. We're seeing, long story short, we're seeing people out there like, oh, we need a center back. We need a winger. We need, another 10. We need a right back, left back, all this stuff. Like there are a lot of holes, but unfortunately with FC Cincinnati, there is really only 2 available senior spots, maybe 3 if Kovacevic. So I think it's, if Mendez is coming and Acosta's coming, that's 20. You're either going to need to find a new winger that we like better than Kovacevic, or keep Kovacevic till at least the summer. And that's if you keep Locadia. The key point I'm making is that we want all these different parts. We want, a new winger, maybe left back, right back, center back, all this stuff. We don't really have enough spots to get guys that we're going to get now. Our spots available are the homegrown spots where we really can't fill those right now. Or we sign draft picks. That's it. Unless we start to see, we want to all of a sudden pay Medellin to walk away, which I don't think that's going to happen. He's too involved with the club. If we want to pay Stanko to go away, which again, I don't see it, because we realistically, we wanted to bring him back this year. So while we're going out there and we're saying, yeah, we want to bring in 4 or 5 more guys, it's just not possible unless guys go and 5 months or 5 weeks till the season starts. I just don't see it.
Brian, you got anything to add here?
I think you're spot on there. Again, it kind of plays to what we're talking about Kyle Scott too. Is there room for him? So you realistically have to think that somebody gets moved on, or somebody gets written off. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that remain in regards to the orange and blue. And again, with the preseason really just kicking off, players reporting to Cincinnati. It's good, like I said, very exciting that Brenner is here in town. He's going to quarantine. I believe it's for a week, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good that he's here. He can get acclimated to the warm metropolis that is Southern Ohio at this time of year. Well, at least it was today. But of course, by Friday, it could be 40 degrees and snowing again. You just never know in this crazy state. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty exciting. Again, a lot of folks earlier on in the show maybe felt like it was a little down, a little depressing, but I think there's room to be optimistic, right? I mean, it's just be thankful that we're going to have soccer here again in 2021 and in a brand new facility. So pretty exciting times there. We want to hear from you, though. Well, what are your thoughts on the roster as it currently stands? What are your thoughts on what Jaap Stam had to say today in his press conference? Hit us up via email, feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show, gents. And I think it is a good time for us to borrow some material from Extratime. They asked the question, 13.5 goals for the over-under on Brenner. So I'm going to put it to you three. We kind of touched on it earlier, but I said I'm taking the under. Bry, let's say there's no Acosta, and it's just Brenner up top. Were you taking the over or are you taking the under?
I don't know how you could bet the over on that one. Oh, geez. I don't see it. I mean, you look at guys like Ezekiel Barco and Brian Rodriguez, and these guys are huge dollar players, and the stats would say that they're not going to be like, if you bring like a $15 million 25-year-old versus a $15 million 20 or 19-year-old, you're going to get different levels of production. So I don't see it. As much as I think he's still going to be a good player, I don't want to put him as like, this is our best player because he's the most expensive.
Bill Wolf, the Wolfman, chiming in our chat room on YouTube, says no Acosta. He's taking the under.
Yeah.
He's also the optimist too. Surprising.
If he doesn't get if we don't get it doesn't even have to be Lucho Acosta, because I don't know if I necessarily love that move, even though he's starting to play better. If we don't get a number 10 attacking midfielder, somebody that's going to set the table, I think he will have had an amazing year if he scores 10. We saw last year how it was legitimately like Joe Zhao running up the sideline and like he's trying to do everything himself. Like, are we going to sit through another season of that again? I think we've seen Amaya. He's not even going to be able to be here a lot of the preseason. He needs to improve. I do think like we're going to see, bumps up and increases in production, but like 13, that would be a lot. I mean, Joey does say, think about all the chances that we miss inside the box. Brenner is going to bang it 10 in at least. Man, I'd love it. I think he'll do better than Locadia. And I think with somebody here that's going to help support Loca, I think that's probably going to also take away from some of Brenner's goal production, because Loca got in some dangerous spots. So if you have those two guys running off each other and a 10 to set the table, neither one of them might get to 13, but damn, you might see FC Cincinnati be a lot better.
I think that's what I'm hitting on, Brad. I would probably take the under on 13.5, but not in any sort of a pessimistic way. I'm really counting on a guy like Yuya Kubo to chip in with 8 or 9 goals this year. I really think I've seen enough of him that I think that Brenner dropping in to link up play in the midfield like he really likes to do is going to help guys like Kubo and Barreal get more space. If Brenner's playing up top with Locadia at times, I think Locadia gets more space to operate as an always standing between two center backs, having both of them pressing on him. Brenner is going to create a lot of problems even when he isn't scoring goals for teams, because his movement is so good, his link up play is so good. I think he makes everyone better. So I go under on 13.5, but I think that he creates many more opportunities for other players and the team scores many more goals as a result.
I like Bjorn's comment that Loca needs to work on his short game in the comment section. That's brilliant.
I mean, 13 puts you like top 10 in goals in 2019. Just to give you kind of an idea of what that production is.
So if I asked you, gentlemen, as a team, as a whole, last year they scored 12. 12.
Don't remind us.
If I gave you an over-under of, I'll say 27.5. That's double last year's goal output.
Mhm.
What are you taking?
Hammer that
I
over
would
every day.
hammer that over.
You're taking the over.
Absolutely.
I think our over-under mark for goals should be like 48. 45 or 48.
That's up there.
No, it's really not. You got 34 games. So you get a goal and a half a game. Legitimately, I'm looking at the stats right now. In 2019, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 10 teams that didn't hit that. Not even that. 9 teams that didn't hit that number. When you think about it, we should be hitting that with 2 players that at one point in time, if you combine their best values in one time, $35 million front line. We need to be doing that, or we need to start asking questions about Jaap Stam.
So wait a second. Let me hear this right. Brad is sitting here saying our over-under should be in the 40s, yet this team's still not going to be any good. There's too many question marks.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm with you, Brad. The over-under should be in the 40s, and that's because this team has so much potential to go from 12 goals to 40 goals. What a leap. What a growth. I'm excited for this. I think that that this team is going to go and it's going to have a lot of exciting games, and there's going to be some growing pains too, but we're going to get moving and it's going to be a fun season.
I didn't say we were going to hit that. I said that's what we need to hit. That's legitimately what this club needs to hit. And if the club doesn't hit that, that's when we need to start holding people accountable.
We conceded 75 goals 2 years ago.
I'm just saying.
We conceded 36 through 23 last season, so we
I'm
might
pissed.
score more, but we're going to give up a lot.
I'm pissed because people are happy we're going to go from last to third last. That's what I'm pissed about. I want us to be better, and I don't think we're making the right moves to be better. We've literally made 2 impact moves, maybe on a team that needed a ton of them, and then we got them in a spot we didn't necessarily need up top, and then a left back, which we do need, but now, hell, we need a left back too. So, like, that's my beef. Is like, yeah, we might be better. Like the guys that I was on a podcast tonight, Blue City Radio, and they're like, oh yeah, Brad, right off the bat, what are you guys gonna be better? And I'm like, well, shit, we can't be worse. But structurally, there's like, this is what Matt Doyle was saying. Structurally, there are so many flaws. And for guys that are supposed to be soccer experts and all that, like, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And the problem is the way they're spending money. They're spending money like they don't know what the hell to do with it. Like, what's going on with it? And that's what I'm worried about as well. Like, there are so many structural flaws in the budget. Like, if you are a business owner looking at this budget and how they're just giving money away for guys next year when they could have done other stuff in international spots and what they're going to have to do to acquire this stuff, like, that's why I'm getting beat red on this freaking camera right now. That's why Ken gets so mad every week. I cannot be. I want to be optimistic. I love this team, but I'm also pissed off because the way I'm seeing these moves, and they talk one way and then they do another way. Sorry.
Can we make a shirt with Brad's red face?
We might have to do that.
It just gets me so upset. It's like I look at these numbers and I want to see these moves we need to do, and then like, why the hell do we bring back some of these players? Put the t-shirt up over me.
Yep. Get that hashtag demand better t-shirt over at Cincinnati Soccer Talk.
Just makes me so mad. I just don't see the plan. I just don't. Yeah, we're going to be a little bit better. Yeah, we're parading out a $13 million signing when we got a lot of freaking issues in our closet right now. I just, golly.
On that note,
hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'll eat the crow when I'm wrong. And I trust coach's opinion on soccer way more than me. I just don't see it. I don't.
Well, that's a good way to end the show.
And he's not even drinking tonight. I love it.
It's all right. It's all right. I love the passion. I definitely love the passion. As we begin to wrap things up here, make sure you go check out the show on Apple Podcasts. You get subscribed so you don't miss a single episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. While you're there, get subscribed to Talking Tactics so you don't miss a single episode of that show. Coach, we're not going to have a show this week. but we're going to be continuing it going forward.
Yeah, so no talking tactics this week. We got some stuff in the works, so we'll definitely be coming back. But I did want to let you all know that tonight I am drinking a Sound the Alarm out of Braxton. You get in your beer review, since you're not going to get your soccer content, we'll give you what you really care about here. Sound the Alarm is an IPA. It's a New England IPA. It's got a subtle fruitiness to it, some orange peel. It's pretty good, very drinkable. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. All right. I'm glad to see you're moving on from Listerman.
Yeah,
taking
it just
a risk.
happens to be that sometimes you have to expand your bounds a little bit. FC or Cincinnati has a lot of beer and a lot of good breweries, so I'm going to have to venture out a bit, I think.
And not that there's anything wrong with Listerman. It's just I felt like, as somebody who would sit and listen to your show every week, it felt like you were just going down the menu.
My fridge is still full of Listerman. I just chose a Braxton beer specifically to avoid, giving the Listerman. Listerman just makes so many good beers. They have a Spurs beer. I mean, what more can you ask?
And on that note, we wrap things up here. Coach, you got any other final thoughts as we get out of here? Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy that we got the two sides of Cincinnati here, right? You have the extreme pessimism that we all have burning in our hearts due to years of just being soiled upon by all of our opponents and all of the national pundits. And then you have the eternal offseason Cincinnati optimism. If you can't be optimistic in a Cincinnati offseason, then you can't live in this city, because there's no optimism to have during most seasons. So stay positive. Keep an eye on all that potential growth, and let's watch these players make good on it and score 40 plus goals. You heard Brad Weigel predict it. That's what I heard. He's calling for 44 goals this season. Let's make it happen.
44 goals, ship 70. Oh.
Coach, as always, appreciate you being on, buddy.
Happy to do it. Just had so much fun tonight.
Brian Weigel, final thoughts?
I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on the Jaap Stam press conference today, and I could listen to that guy talk football for hours. And I absolutely love his passion about talking about the whole approach for his group this year. The fitness, the tactical, how he wants to set up his team and how he wants guys to react on the pitch, and just how he didn't have the time to do that really a lot last year. And I'm optimistic on that side that we'll see quite a bit of improvement, especially considering like the last 5-6 games of last year were absolutely terrible, and you'd hope he'd have more of his things. So, I'm rooting for him. We're rooting for these guys. I see there's a lot of negative things on some of this, the chat room about outlooks, but we're not trying to just be Debbie Downers, but we're also not going to blow sunshine and rainbows at you guys. We're going to give our honest takes. That's why we try to have as many people on here to give their honest views. And I feel very confident in Jaap Stam that we're at least going to have a genuine improvement over last year. Now, again, 45 goals and shipping 60, you're still going to lose a lot of games that way. And I think that's where we're headed right now without some defensive help. But I mean, it is what it is. We're still making progress. So, but I'm excited. I think he's the right guy to be here.
And appreciate you as always being on the show too, Bri. Bri had his first practice tonight as a coach, so we can also call him Coach Brian Weigel here on the show.
I've coached quite a bit of baseball in my time, but I've never ever even thought of doing soccer. And I volunteered to be like an assistant coach, and then I got the email saying you're going to be the head coach, and I'm like, oh yippee! So yeah, screaming 5-year-olds, good times.
What's your team name?
We don't have one yet.
Oh,
go with the Foozers. I hear it's up and coming. Up the Foozers.
Just order your t-shirts from cst.com and there you go.
Yeah. If you guys have any training tips, please DM me on Twitter, because I had a 45-minute session tonight, and about 35 minutes through, I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? Scrimmage! My son Brian did score a goal, and I think he's going to be a little physical in this age group, so we'll see.
And if you do have tips, you can also email them to us at feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com, and we'll make sure that we send them to Brian's way. Bri, as always, we appreciate you being on, bud.
Thank you, pal.
Jeff Tebbis with the the chat of the night. Abramovich already wants to fire Brian.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
All you need to do to be a successful U6 coach is just show up, because all the other parents are like, thank you. You were stupid enough to say yes.
Oh, I can't wait to watch videos. It's going to be fun.
The 4-3-3 scrum.
That's right.
Hey, he did wear his FC Cincinnati kit today.
Yes, he
Proud of
did.
him.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Brad Weigel. Brad, appreciate you being on the show, bub.
You know, I was on Blue City Radio. I'll tweet that out earlier tonight. That was a little more optimistic, Brad. And then you guys get Brad to dig into the numbers on CST, and I look at the numbers, and it just makes me mad. So I apologize for that, guys. But I did have a good day today. I did. I got to go see our main man, Boston Razzle Dazzle Brazzle.
Hey.
I think a lot of you guys, if you listened last week, Boston let everybody know that he was diagnosed with kind of a rare form of cancer. He'd been undergoing some radiation, and he had to have surgery last Friday. And so went over there to pay him a visit. He's back at home, resting, recuperating. So I think if you guys just take some time out of your days, send a prayer for Boston. He still has some recovery to go. They are hopeful, but just send him a prayer, send him a note. I think he would love to hear from everybody. He's just going to be sitting at home for the next 6 weeks with his phone and his TV. So feel free to reach out to him so he doesn't feel lonely. And then we'll be back, in time for March to match day in the middle of April. So just glad to hear and see Boston. He's doing well, and I think he loves and feeds off of your guys' support.
I had a podcasting friend of mine. He would always refer to the power of podcasting, right? And I just found it absolutely crazy to think about how random this is. But we razz Boston for always being on PTO, right? Well, his nurse,
there you go.
His nurse walks into the room at his recovery room and says, well, Mr. PTO. What are the odds of that? That is freaking remarkable. So, yes, that's when Boston told us that. I couldn't believe it. I thought that was tremendous. So, I echo Brad's sentiments as well. Boston, we're thinking about you. We're hoping that you have a quick recovery, and we're glad that you're kicking cancer's butt. I think we all agree with that statement. Last but certainly not least, my final thought today is National Women's Day. So I want to give a big shout out to two women that we have worked with pretty closely here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. I want to give a big shout out to the pride of Union Elementary, Laurel Failer. I found out that she and I recently went to elementary school together, which was kind of crazy to think about that too. And Alex Steck at FC Cincinnati. We've worked with them closely over the past few years. It's National Women's Appreciation Day. Of course, every day in our world is National Appreciation Day, but we're going to celebrate it even more today. So I want to give a big shout out to those two folks as well. Anything else, gents? Am I missing anything?
We're going to talk about Mr. Verde.
Good call. I mean, Coach kind of dropped the hammer earlier tonight in regards to Mike. Yes, a lot of folks. Yes, a lot of folks have been asking us with the news that Mike LaHood, as the new English TV color analyst for the new squad there in Austin FC. Yes, he is moving on from Cincinnati Soccer Talk, and rightly so. We knew, at least we anticipated, that when Mike came aboard last year, that this was going to be a short stay. I think the three of us here all kind of knew that he had his sights set on bigger and better things, and rightly so. He's a very talented man, does a great job. He's very well spoken, and so yes, he is moving on from Cincinnati Soccer Talk, and I think we cannot be more proud of Michael and this new achievement. And he's going to do a great job there with Austin. As much as we don't want to root for them because of all the other things, the fact they're another team in the league, I think a part of us here in Cincinnati will always root for Mike LaHood. At least all of us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk certainly will. So, Mike, if you're listening, thank you for being with us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. You elevated our game with your presence, and we couldn't be more thrilled, right, gents?
Cincinnati Soccer Talk, where stars come to be born.
Your bald head is shining, Coach.
Always. It's my glow of optimism.
So is mine with these lights in this room.
Anyway, on that note, thanks again for joining us here this week on the show. My thanks to Matt Doyle for joining us from Extratime and MLSsoccer.com. Always appreciate getting his insights on FC Cincinnati. So for Coach Brad Goff, Brad Weigel, and Brian Weigel, I'm Subes reminding you to watch your tackles, and we'll see you all next week.